Racism, prejudice or discrimination directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. Throughout the history of America, different groups of citizens have fought for their rights the American Constitution gave to them. The Civil Rights Movement was a campaign. Because of the color of their skin, African Americans did not have the same rights as white people. In the 1950s and 60s, African Americans fought against the national systems and authorities. March 7, 1965, 600 peaceful protesters would participate in the Salem to Montgomery March to protest the killing of black civil rights activist Jimmy Lee Jackson, who was killed by a white police officer. As the protesters neared Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were blocked by Alabama state and local police, sent by Alabama Governor George C. Wallace. Refusing to stand down, protesters moved forward and were viciously beaten and tear-gassed by police officers, and dozens of protesters were hospitalized. Some activists wanted to retaliate and protest with violence, but Dr. King pushed for nonviolent protests and eventually gained federal protection for another march. In 1865, after the Civil War, slavery was ended, and African Americans became citizens and got the right to vote. However, due to all the prejudice against them, the laws were ignored.
You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
Many of the southern states have passed laws separating the African Americans from the whites. At this time, one young lady would take a stand against prejudice. Segregation had gone too far. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white male.
On the orders of the bus driver after the white seats had been occupied in the front. And of course, I was not in the front of the bus.
After Rosa Parks' protest, African Americans didn't want to be at the back of the bus anymore. So, in 1955, the Bus Boycott Act began.
Started a bus protest which literally electrified the nation.
On June 5, 1956, the Federal District Court ruled Broder v. Galley that bus segregation was unconstitutional. In November 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed Broder v. Galley and struck down laws requiring segregated seating on public buses. On December 20th, 1956, Martin Luther King called for the end of the boycott, and the community agreed. Quote, "We came to see that, in the long run, it is more honorable to walk in dignity than ride in humiliation. So we decided to substitute tired feet for tired souls and walk in the streets of Montgomery." The sad thing is, racism and prejudice often go beyond one's color of their skin or what they believe in. Anti-Semitism is the belief or behavior hostile toward Jews because they are Jewish. Hitler was known for throwing the Jewish into concentration camps, starving them, experimenting on them, torturing them, all because they believed in something different than what he believed in. Because of one man's bigotry, over 6 million Jews, unfortunately, lost their lives. Even in today's politics, you can see racist remarks hidden through their campaign.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're raping.
I want to build a wall. I'm going to build a wall. I want to build a wall.
It can even be a driving force behind violent crimes.
The victims were gunned down at 2 separate shisha bars. Authorities say they all had a migrant background. Officials also say the 43-year-old suspect had deep-rooted racist views and left a letter and a video admitting
We decided to ask several students at our school if they've ever seen or experienced racism.
Unfortunately, I have witnessed and been subject of a lot of racism.
Sadly, this is kind of a big thing, and it's kind of weird to think about because that's something that happened a long time ago with slavery and all this stuff.
Yes, I have experienced racism. It's seen all over the place, and usually people don't really make a big deal out of it because they make racist jokes that are supposed to be funny, and if you say something about it, you kind of get talk down and said, oh, it was just a joke, but in real life it's actually really racist.
Here it's really hard, especially if you're growing up in a minority or being biracial. Especially if minorities here are just sometimes you can, depending on the crowd, you can be really oppressed, and I think it's really unfortunate that this stuff is just, it's so toxic and it's really spreading to the kids here too, because it's kind of monkey see, monkey do.
In my math class a few days ago, I wasn't having the best day, I guess, and this guy, he kept on asking me, what wrong, KT? What's wrong? And I was just so done with everything at that point.
My mom works at a school for teaching special ed kids, and this one kid in her class is African American, and while she was at a meeting, one of the teachers was saying, oh, well, he's gonna get shot in the future by a police officer.
I've witnessed it quite a lot. The most recent time I can remember is a few days ago when I was with my friend. He's African American, and this drunk, I don't know if he was drunk or high or whatever, but this idiot comes over and he literally starts to push around my friend and, just kind of shove him in a wall, calling him a lot of racial slurs.
I was in front of other teachers and staff, the principal even, and they all just found it funny.
Yes, I have seen it before. I was in Texas visiting my family, and we were walking down the street with my family and everything, and we saw this white guy yelling at this black guy and telling him that he can't achieve anything in his life and he can't do anything with his life because he's black, and that he called him the hard R.
I think racism is really stupid because the fact that you can base an entire race off what you've seen a few people do or what you see on the media is really, I don't know, it's just really stupid to me.
Even with all the fighting people have done, even with all the movements people have made, we're still seeing hatred and bigotry towards people of different races and different beliefs. I say we just respect one another for what we believe in, whatever we look like, whatever we think. We just be nice to one another and respect each other for who we are.